At this point, it's former Ole Miss linebacker Chance Campbell joins us here on A Visit with Chance Campbell, presented by The Rogue. The Rogue, 4450 I-55 North in Jackson, or therogue.com, where you can get pullovers like the one that Chance is wearing now, hats like the one I'm wearing, and lots of other stuff too. The great college collection that they have there, Ole Miss stuff, Mississippi State, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, whatever, for the person in your life looking for a birthday present, Valentine's Day present, stuff like that. They've got a great selection of all that at The Rogue, also all the latest from all the name brands. So check them out at 4450 I-55 North in Jackson, or therogue.com. Chance, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. So we could talk about the Sugar Bowl and stuff. It probably didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, but that's life. Matt Corral gets hurt in the first quarter, and I'm sure the plan changed a little bit at that point. Just from your experience, I guess, did you go into that game sort of thinking in the back of your mind, this might be my last college game?
Yeah, actually, so I wanted to make a decision, like when I was at home for Christmas, and tried to, and then I kept kind of teetering, going back and forth, and then just decided to kind of put it on pause, because what I didn't want to do is, like be in the week or into the game, like thinking about that. So if I was going to play again, if I was going to come back, I didn't want that clouding my judgment. If I thought I was going to leave, I didn't want to put too much pressure on the game anyway. So I really hadn't decided till I think I probably made a final decision like Monday after the game.
You guys defensively at the beginning of the year, and I talked to some of you about it during the Sugar Bowl week. I mean, you guys had a week in fairly early October where you give up 676 yards and 51 points. If I told you that day that by the end of the season you guys would be as good as you were defensively, would you have believed it, honestly?
Yeah, and that's the fun part is, like, I knew how close we were because you spend so much time in the building. And as strong as we finished this season, like if we would have had it again, I don't have much doubt that we'd finish even stronger than what we did, because we had all the right stuff in place. And I know from an outside perspective, sometimes it's tough to see, and you hear that a lot where it's like, oh, we're close. It's like, yeah, I know they get said a lot, but we really were very close. It's like, 2-3 feet here, communication error here, and like you watch points come off the board. So when we saw what happened, like everything that had happened was fixable. Like it wasn't ever an issue of not having the right guys or not having the right scheme or the coach. Like we had everything in place. It was just kind of like a matter of doing it. So I think, that's not a fun stat to get thrown out, 51 points. But I think that was like a good wake-up call for us. And I think that really helped us going forward.
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of guys that said they thought that was kind of the turning point, really. That next day or two after that game, guys went into the facility and were like, we're close, but we got to get there. We've just got to, not that it was like, maybe just sharpen focus a little bit. Just prepare just a little bit more. Just think about it just a little bit more. And then boom, it kind of happened.
Yeah. No, I think that's the cool part is it wasn't, like I think guys maybe kind of turned it up just a little bit, but that's, we weren't lacking before, and there wasn't like a crazy difference after. It was a lot of just the small things. It's like coming down to communication. Like if everybody's playing the same defense, I mean, we had some really good guys on that defensive front and in the back end, and like we had the people and we knew what we had to do. So a lot of it was just getting on the same page and understanding our own jobs as well as like kind of jobs next to us, so that we were comfortable doing what we had to do.
I know obnoxious reporters like me asked you about your decision right after the game, primarily because I just thought I had to. That's doing my job. I expected the answers that I got from both you and Snoop Connor, but I needed to do it because otherwise people come at me and go, you guys don't ever ask tough questions. It's like, well, I did. I asked. And you knew what the answer would be. So the game ends and you leave New Orleans, and I assume you went back home for a couple of days. Take me through the decision when you realize, okay, I've got to make a decision here. There is actually a deadline. I'm either going to declare for the NFL or I'm going to come back for another season of college football. Yeah,
it was actually kind of tricky. We had my parents were great, and they, for a whole host of reasons, but I'm about to talk about, they came to a lot, like every one of my games for the most part. And so they flew a lot, and they had a lot of flight issues, and it ended that way too. My parents, my family, my girlfriend actually got stuck in New Orleans. So like I wanted to like sit down, talk it through with them and go all the way down like in person. And they were stuck in New Orleans for an extra day. So a lot of it happened like by phone and FaceTime, and we're just talking through it. And thankfully they ended up getting home, but like we kind of had made a decision. I want to say it was so Sunday happened. It was probably Monday is when I kind of like, I thought about it and talked to them a lot and kind of come to that. And then they ended up getting home Monday night. So like we kind of got together. They got home late. We just talked, kind of enjoyed it for a second, and then kind of went on the back half of the process trying to get everything in order like on that end.
I sensed talking to you, and I told you at the beginning I wasn't going to bother you about it. And we didn't talk about it, you and I, but maybe a couple of times for just a few seconds. But I always sensed that you were probably going to leave and go to the NFL because that was your dream and you'd sort of achieved what you were going to achieve. But how difficult was it ultimately to kind of pull the trigger on it? Because I know you're a really thoughtful person and you put a lot of I think you put a lot of emphasis into process, including the way you prepare, the way you think, all of those things. But I could sense that there was also the emotional side of this. There wasn't just the pragmatic side. There was kind of an emotional side about what is it that I really want to do?
Yeah, it was really hard, and it's kind of funny because I talked a ton with my family about it. My brothers, my sister, mom, dad. Like depending on which day I talked to them, I remember being home right after Thanksgiving. I was pretty sure I was going to come back, like I was going to stay, and I was talking about like what that would look like. My mom was like, "Did you make a decision?" And I was like, "No." Like but like I was talking as if I had already made a decision, and then like fast forward a week, and I'm talking about what life would look like if I were to declare. And my dad's like, "So are you set?" And I was like, "No, I was thinking this road." So like it was difficult. I like teetered back and forth, and like I ended up putting everything on paper, and I thought that it would be super clear when I did that, and still struggled. And I just kind of like I like making a decision and then going forward. But I had a certain amount of time. Coach Durkin was actually really helpful. He was like, "Look, whenever you have a hard decision, like you have like X amount of time, get all the information that you can, and then use that time. And then at some point in that process, like you'll know." And it's always like a frustrating thing when people say they're like, "Oh, you're just gonna know it." Like when you don't, you're like, "All right, well, when's that gonna come?" Because I'm really unsure right now. And then eventually everything clears up, and you get to a point where you're happy with the decision, then you kind of just make it and don't look back.
So if I don't ask a couple of these tough questions, people will yell at me for going soft on you. So I'm going to ask a couple of quote tough questions here. Your brother was coming out of prep school. I think he's committed. Has he committed to Virginia Tech? Is that done?
No, he hasn't committed
yet.
Okay. He's still figuring through things.
To this point, he hasn't had a scholarship offer from Ole Miss. Had he had a scholarship offer, would that have changed the game for you at all?
No, and that's the hard thing. Like I don't know. I've talked about this before. I love my family more than anything in this world. But my brother would be mad at me if I had made a decision based off of that. And so it was really tough going through this process, trying to, because the idea of playing football with him, that was hard for me because we actually missed an opportunity to do that. I was in 7th grade, and I think about it pretty often. Like how cool that would have been to play. We played basketball with each other when we were younger, and that was like some of the most fun I had playing sports. We just have funny stories of things taken too seriously from when we were 8, 9, 10 years old. But like,
sure, of course,
during that time, it must have been life or death. But so I thought about that a lot. But I wouldn't want to make a decision based off of that because that's not how he would want me to do it. It's not how I think I should do it. But it was definitely hard to kind of try to separate those things.
Then the other, of course, is you're very close with DJ Durkin. It was one of the connections that got you to Ole Miss, I think. And, you knew at least there were reports that had come out before the Sugar Bowl that he was being pursued by Texas A&M. He ultimately took that job as the defensive coordinator there. Did his departure play any role at all into your decision?
No, and that's actually kind of the fun part is, so I think I've talked to you about like deleting Twitter and Instagram. So I hadn't seen those things. So when I think I was in the post game interview at after the Sugar Bowl, when they were I think Coach Kiffin was asked questions about reports of Durkin getting interest, and I like I don't know if I made a face. I'd have to look at it, but I remember looking and being like, huh. And then after the game, the season was finished, so I re-downloaded my stuff and looked at it. And then I think my dad and my brother had sent me over a screenshot. And it was after I had made my decision, but it was funny because I was like, oh, I guess like that was confirmation that I think I was making the right decision. So I didn't know it on the front end, but it was funny to see it on the back end and be like, all right, I think that was a good thing.
So when you look back on this year, and we talked about it a lot over the course of the fall, that the pandemic was going on. You made a decision sort of sight unseen. When you look back on this year at Ole Miss, I know it's still really fresh, and so you probably haven't had a complete amount of time to process it and put it to a soundtrack or whatever in your mind. But when you think back to it, how do you think you'll remember this year?
It was probably one of the most fun years I had playing football. So playing college football was awesome. I had a great time at Maryland, like have experiences there. I'm like hold close. Just from like a winning perspective, I won more games here in 1 year than I did in 3 years at Maryland. So just like I never lost at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. So like that's really cool to feel like a true home field advantage. And the SEC experience is just a little different. Everyone kind of told me that, and like each week in the SEC, I saw reasons as to why that was true. And then got to play with a lot of really great dudes. Like some of the guys here, I like some of the best teammates I played with. And then coaching wise, got to get coached by like some really, really great men. And then got to spend a lot of time with Coach Durkin, who I've talked about and I think super highly of. So I just have like the experience here was awesome. So that's why it was just like really cool to just, I only got good things to say, which is just like, that's rare, I think.
Yeah, I told your dad this on Saturday. It was kind of fun. Because I grew up in the South. I've lived in, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and I've covered Auburn and Ole Miss, and my whole life has kind of been the SEC. And it's been fun to sort of see the craziness through a new person's eyes, a little bit, because it just, I don't know, like, talking to your dad and talking to you, it was kind of funny to see just kind of the reaction to, man, these people, it's fun and they mean this in a good way, but we're kind of nuts about this, the whole college football thing. And you got to, it was always kind of enjoyed your perspectives on whether it was the Grove or your first trip to Auburn or Tuscaloosa or whatever. I just always thought it was kind of funny to get your reaction to some of the nuttiness of it all.
Yeah. Even smaller things. So I can't really describe. So even though I have now spent a lot of time at Ole Miss, I can't really describe the campus super well. But off of Old Taylor, I lived in the flats. Like that was the apartment that I stayed in. And I guess there's a rec center, like a Ole Miss rec center, and there's a parking lot across from it. But I guess that's where they park the RVs. And so you see, like I want to say it was after the A&M game. I went home with my family was there. They were staying with me in the apartment, so it was a little crowded, but we were trying to get some food after the game, and we couldn't go anywhere because everything was like directed one way. So this was 2 hours after the game, and like couldn't get anywhere because it was one way. And so we ended up taking like the back road, and we saw the RV park, and it was just like, there must have been 20 RVs, like big, souped up, nice ones. And I was like, oh shoot, I guess they've been camped out for a while. Came back the next morning, like to go into the facility, drove the back way again, and like probably 15 of them still there. Like, so it's just, I just remember talking to them, just like, that's wild. Like, this is not a one-day event. This is a like week-long deal. Just another example, like things being different, smaller, but it's just like things that I'll remember.
So we're talking right now. You're in Florida. Tell me about what you have planned between now and the NFL draft.
Yeah, just training. So it's a lot of it. You just kind of put your head down, and there's a lot of things that happen between now and then. But you're really only in control of so much of it. So like one of the things that you're in control of is how much work you can put in. So you just kind of put your head down, and you get to be in these crazy facilities where they have these super detailed plans, and they have this personnel grouping that takes care of pretty much everything you would need. So there's not a whole lot of thinking that goes into it. You don't have to do too much thinking. You just kind of have to show up on time and work. So that's kind of the fun part. It's like your job now. So that's kind of what I got planned for the next couple of months.
So you've proved people wrong in football for a long time. I know it's just probably part of the chip on the shoulder that you're pretty humble about, but I know it's there. The NFL people, there's always maybe he's a step slow, or he's not quite big enough, or all of that stuff. What is the one or two things that you think you sort of have to show in combine settings, which is not football, by the way, in combine settings, to sort of erase some of those doubts?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of them. They talked about it's a speed thing. It's funny to me because it's just always interesting how those things arrive. But if the tape isn't the athletic display that they'd like to see, I'm excited because I think that's something that I can kind of disprove and dispel. So definitely the 40 is always a big deal for linebackers. So I think that's something that I'm going to have to work on. And then, it's always interesting to see the dynamic of what people try to critique or try to praise. So like the size thing has always been an issue. And I just also find that interesting because, 6'3", 235, like I'd like to say that's, one of a good size backer, and then if I'm 245, then I'm probably going to be too slow. So, but I think
where does that stuff come from? I mean, is it media created? Because it's not just media, right? I mean, it kind of gets churned into the football realm, and it becomes a reality, whether it is or not. It's like people are like, well, he's undersized, and I'm like, well, he's the same size as a lot of people who play linebacker in the NFL, but yet that stereotype or that tag gets put on you, and man, it's like gets super glued on you from a media scouting perspective a little bit until you're somehow able to rip it away, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not really sure too, because there's been this change in the league where they wanted 255-pound linebackers, but I don't think they could touch both sidelines of the field without getting gassed. So like now the mold is guys who are a little bit lighter, they run a little bit better. So I think that's something that I do well. I think I can cover sideline to sideline. So it's interesting to see where the speed thing comes from, and the size deal. I don't know. I actually got labeled at 240. So I was 240 before I came down. Played the season around 235. But one guy weighs 240. He's a big backer. Another guy's 240, 235, and he's small. So I'm not really sure where that comes from. But the thing that's always been kind of encouraging to me is, I don't. Like when I'm playing, they're not like, oh, he didn't make that play because he's too light. And I don't think I've had a lot of those. And I don't think I've missed plays because I'm too slow. So I think a lot of my plays have been, I guess I'm a smart linebacker and I diagnose plays well. So I guess I'm not athletic. I just pick things up well.
You get tagged as cerebral. And I'm like, man, he's hitting big people that are running really fast. I mean, there's more to it than being cerebral. But I don't know. I'm always amused by it. I mean, we in the media were terrible about it. We tag people. We create a storyline, and by God, there's no deviating from it. You just stay on it, and even when it's proven false, you see that in all sorts of things beyond just sports. It's a real media negative. It drives me nuts that you can't change over time. Like you'll see them say that a quarterback, for example, he can't read defenses. And then 2 years later, he's reading defenses. And they're like, well, he didn't used to read defenses well. I'm like, well, he was 19. I mean, he got better over time. That was the point. And man, we put a label on somebody, and that's that.
Well, I think the good news for that, and something that it was hard for me, especially when I was younger, because I was like, no, you guys think that? Like, that's what I am? And it used to bug me, but now it doesn't. I'd be lying if I say I don't hear some of those things and try to stack a chip on. And that's, I think that's part of who I am. I think that's served me well to this point. But the other part is I had some great advice one time. It's you can't accept praise from people you wouldn't accept criticism from. And so sometimes when I see the things that people say, and I'm like, oh no, they're wrong. Well, I can't do that. And then when someone says something nice, be like, yeah, they're right. So the easiest way is just to block it all out. Like at the end of the day, the only thing that I really care about, other than all the stuff off the field is, how do I play? And if I play well, then all those things can hold true, and sure. But if I don't play well, then that's what that is. But at the end of the day, it's really about play, and that's something that for the most part I'm under control. Like I have under control. And how people see that, I don't know. If I go out and run a crazy 40, then people go look back and they're, oh, he played, he's super fast and athletic. And if I go out and I run a really poor 40, then it's, oh, he's unathletic, he's just really cerebral. So it didn't really change what ended up happening on the field. So to me, a lot of that used to really stress me out, and I just kind of put my head down, work as hard as I can, and let the chips fall where they do.
Well, I know people know this by now about you because we've done, I don't know, 13 or 14 of these, and people have gotten to know you as a person other than, you know, the guy in a uniform every Saturday, which I think is one of the cool things about this. It's, you know, as media access has been sort of cut off over the years, I've never once in my entire career argued for access. I've never said, oh, you guys should let us have more access. But I have told people in media relations and stuff, I'm like, you know, you want the fans to get to know the guys on the field as people, not just football robots, but as people. And they've gotten to know you. And the one thing that's very clear is no matter what does or doesn't happen with your football career, you're going to be just fine in the real world. I mean, you're going to do great. I wrote this in 10 thoughts. I told your dad this Saturday. Football schedules are busy for people. You know, they'll call you and say, hey, we need you in the facility and we need you to come watch this film or do this. And then you were a guy you're one of the first guys in, last guys to leave type people anyway. But we kind of scheduled this when you and I started this. And I'm telling this for people out there to know this about you, because I think when you end up in the NFL, you're going to have a lot of fans down here cheering for whatever team it is that you're with. I was like, hey, man, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know whether I'm ripping you off or you're ripping me off. I have no idea. This NIL thing was brand new, and I didn't really know how this would kind of go. And because, you know, we'd talked a couple of times, but I'm like, I don't know what he's like. Is he going to show up on time? Is he going to cancel on me? And there were 2 or 3 times that you had to reschedule, but you always were so incredibly conscientious about it, about, hey, can I move this back 30 minutes? Can we go 30 minutes earlier? And it was always cool because since the pandemic hit, my schedule is like live in this room. And so it was like, yeah, that's no problem. But I was always so impressed with it. You got you'll do incredibly well in life. There's no doubt about that. And hopefully for you, that includes a career in the NFL, because I know that's a dream of yours, but, and I certainly hope it happens, but whatever happens, you're going to be fine, because you've got, and I think people have gotten to see that from you. You've got life skills that frankly, a lot of people your age or in my age don't have. And so you'll do really well.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's been really cool because I mean, like you said, you live in your room. I lived in the facility and then in my room. So I didn't really get out too much. So it's been cool to kind of show myself to the Oxford community, because I didn't really get a shot to do that living through this. So it's been really fun.
Well, listen, best of luck to you. I'm sure, I guess you'll probably be back in Oxford for your pro day, probably sometime in March is my guess. So I look forward to seeing you then. But good luck, stay healthy. And like I said, I know things will work out, and hopefully the NFL sees what I think a lot of people have seen watching you play at Ole Miss over the last 13 games. And I'm glad this worked out for us the way it did. I'm glad you had the season that you had. And I told your dad this, and I'll say it publicly here. I'm a big fan, so I hope it really, I hope it works out the way that you dreamed it would. So thanks again for all the time over the course of the season. I know the people at the Rogue are very appreciative. It's been real successful for them too. So again, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Chance. Talk to you soon.
All right.